You may be seated.
I'm reminded of y'all remember that commercial? Sugar Ray Leonard and his son, that 7-Up commercial, and Sugar Ray's jabbing, and then they go back to his kid, and then all the kids' friends come in and they say, "Hey, that's Sugar Ray." And he looks over and he says, "Nah, that's just my dad. That's just my dad. That's just my dad." And I've seen that coming from him a few times. Hey, we have got an awesome day planned for you. Pat Fraher, Ed Rush, Steve Javy, and Dan, Josh Koch. Cannot tell you how much is in store for you today, and how grateful we are that you're here. This is where it starts. And there was some anxiety attached to it. You as referees know probably what I'm talking about. This is a big step, but it's an absolute step that needs to be taken. And you've chosen that step along with us. So I just want to kind of tell you how it got started. About 7:30 in the morning, one morning is how it got started. And my phone rings, and during the season, during the season, Pat and I talk on a regular basis. So my phone rings, and I'm asleep, but I hear it. So I say, "Pat," I grab it. I say, "What's up, bud?" He says, "Deej, what's your purpose in life?" 7:30 in the morning. How do you think I responded to that? I wasn't sure at that moment, but I can guarantee you my answer changed throughout the day, because that response was, "I'm gonna kill you." That's the first purpose, but he had a reason for asking that question, and the question was about, hey, listen, we've been doing camps for 7 years now, but through the process of trying to develop how we referee, we actually developed who we are in searching out what we do, and in all that soul searching, it all came back to faith. And the purpose that we're on this earth, and my simple answer was this: to impact people every day, everywhere I go, every interaction. It's not a simple purpose, simply stated, but what it took was a firm foundation to move forward on, and that foundation is all about faith. So we got to talking, and rather than just do a camp about basketball, that at one juncture I thought that was the most important camp. We knew that at that juncture, we knew this is what it's really about. We didn't know when we started that it would lead to, we're going to do a conference about faith. We had no clue, but here we are. So Pat's going to come, and he's going to give you kind of how we got to this point and how faith has impacted his life. And you're going to hear from Ed, and you're going to hear from Steve, and these are three of the best ever to do what a lot of us aspire to do, whether it's in basketball or baseball or football. It's a skilled craft, and it's a learned ability, and they are three of the absolute best to ever do it, and they have one common denominator: faith. So without further ado, Pat Fraher.
Thank you. Welcome to the Ref Conference. You're going to have to forgive me because I'm a little bit still in awe and shock that this has actually happened. It's fun to see come from an idea to reality. I guess since Darren brought it up with that phone call, I can give you the background prior to the phone call, before I dialed him. To make a long story short, I was in Secaucus, New Jersey, at the Replay Center. I had three days in a row in Secaucus. I know, jealous, aren't you? And I was, as you'll see with my talk, I was researching things for the past 2 years, and to cut to the chase, I rededicated my life to Christ and went all in Secaucus, New Jersey. And once I did that, I was bugging them in prayer, saying, "Hey, I put on the jersey. What's next, right? What do you got for me?" Nothing from the next day, not a thing from them. So I hit them again the next day, hard, pestering them, saying, "Hey, what's the plan here? I'm back on the team, let's go." Nothing. So the third day, he wakes me up at 6 a.m. Now, that is not normal, okay? 6 a.m. is in the middle of the night as far as I'm concerned. And ref conference, in fact, as I look at this slide, I could see it in my mind. And so my first call was to Darren and said, hey, guess what we're going to do? And why I love Darren George is he didn't shoot it down. He didn't ask questions. He didn't poke holes in it. He just said, okay, that's what we're doing. What do you need first? I said, I need a venue. I'm on it. And evidently Dallas Stadium was booked, so we had to settle with this place, but I feel like Joel Osteen up here. This is unbelievable. Eat your heart out. And you know, don't worry about the late arriving crowd today, because through technology, this is going to be seen by a lot of people. So thank you to our AV group as well. So here we are. Just by quick poll, how many, by sport, because all the sports were welcome, how many basketball officials do we have? Well represented, very nice. And again, the Lord knows we need it. Any football? A couple of football. How about umpires, softball or baseball? Very good. Soccer? Volleyball? Mud wrestling? Hey, everybody was invited. Everybody was invited. So let's get into it. Let's have some fun today, too. Why are we here? Well, quite simply, we're going to deliver a faith-first message today, because we believe that when you put your faith first, everything else in your life tends to fall in line. And that's not to say that it's going to be easy, because we know that that's not the case, but it will be bearable. You will handle it. You will get through it. And so today, we're going to talk about the importance of faith in our lives, not only as Christians, but more specifically as Christian officials. And we understand that there's probably multiple denominations represented here today, and that's great. Everybody's welcome. Which brings me to our theme today, which is very basic in nature, and that is the greatest commandment. I think we can all agree on the greatest commandment. No debate there. Good? Because when Jesus was asked, well, what's the greatest commandment? He replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So that'll be our theme for the day. And again, if we just focus on this for the rest of our lives, we're going to have a full plate. We'll have plenty to do. We also recognize that everybody comes here today at a different place in their faith journey. And that's okay too. I call it the no Jesus scale. So on one end of the scale, you got no Jesus, as in 0, right? But on the other end of the scale, you have no Jesus, as you know him personally. And in the middle, you may know of Jesus, and then you may know about Jesus. But we're all trying to know Jesus. And we all fall somewhere on the scale, and that's okay. But our goal is at the end of the day that you at least want to slide over a notch or two towards knowing him. Whoops. Yeah, okay. Our extensive legal department here at SOS wanted me to deliver a disclosure disclaimer before I get started. And it consists of a caution and a warning. The caution is that the Holy Spirit is a very highly flammable substance, in which we will be using today. Some people have just spontaneously combusted. And just so you know that you guys are all, even the ones in the back, are sitting within range. So you've been cautioned, and the warning is that your plans in life may change. And I can only speak from experience, because if you told me that I'd be up here last year talking about faith in front of a bunch of referees, I'd laugh you right out of the room. So you've been cautioned and you've been warned. So let's get into it, which brings you to my talk. And it's titled, Fighting Your Biggest Enemy. This talk all revolves around the research that I've done for the last 2 years on one topic, and that topic is ego. And I originally started researching this topic for officiating purposes, because I wanted to teach officiating. As you know, Darren and I host a camp together. And back in 2017, that's exactly what we did. We based our whole camp based around the ego and how it touches officiating. But what happened was I found the topic so interesting, I kept going with it because it applies to more than just officiating. It applies to life, every aspect of your life, actually. So what I found was, in fact, this could be titled Fighting My Biggest Enemy, because what I found was it was the biggest thing that has kept me back from not only being the best official I could be, but also being the best spouse and the best parent and the best relative and the best friend and the best coworker. You get the point. But worst of all, it kept me from being the best Christian I could be. So today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share my research with you, which in the same time it's going to be ended up sharing my path back to my faith. And I hope you find it as beneficial as I have found. So today, I'd like to start off with, I'm going to run everybody through a crash course in Ego 101. I'm going to give you a 3-minute PhD in ego, of what it is, how it works, what it wants, how you can identify it. Then we'll step back and apply it to officiating. This is an officiating conference, so by golly, we're going to do some officiating today. But then we'll step back wider and we'll take a look at applying it to real life. And then even wider yet still, and we'll apply it to religion and faith and your relationship with God. So you'll find that I'm a quote guy. And this quote was from Deepak Chopra. He's an author. He's written extensively about the ego. And he describes the ego as such, as the following. The ego is not who you really are. The ego is your self-image. It is your social mask. It is the role you are playing. Your social mask thrives on approval. It wants control and is sustained by power because it lives in fear. Well, there you have it. Any questions? There's ego. It's a mouthful. There's a ton in this quote. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this quote piece by piece, and I'm going to paint a picture for you. So the first part, ego is not who you really are. He's right. It's who we think we are. That's why it's also known as the false self. So you'll hear that. That's another word for ego that's commonly used. It is your self-image. It's been described that it's the lens through which we see ourselves, which is why it's also known as our self-identity. And don't feel like you need to keep up with this, because I'm going to make this available for everybody. So this is kind of my notes and visual aids all at once. So, next part. It is your social mask. It is the role you are playing. See, not only is it the lens through which we see ourselves, but it's also what we project to the outside world and what we want them to see. So when you think of roles that we play, we have a family role, friends, our work role, our role in church perhaps, our community. These are all roles that we project. Your social mask thrives on approval. The role of the ego is to seek certainty and approval, because without the struggle, there is no ego. You don't need to go any further than to look at Facebook. Now, I know no one in this room applies, but we probably all know someone who is obviously looking for approval. And if you look at all the things that we search for approval in our lives, or the ego is searching for approval, be our things, our possessions, our position or job. I'll just list them here: our social status, our intellect, our physical appearance, fitness, beauty, our talents or skills, our friends and relatives, who we know, our pedigree or resume, where we come from, our belief system, or memberships of various groups. These are all ways that our ego thrives on and seeks approval. It wants control and is sustained by power. So the ego is all about asset acquisition or asset protection. In short, it wants to protect what it thinks it already has, and it wants to acquire what it thinks it needs in life. So it protects against, and fears actually, loss, rejection, or criticism. But on the flip side, it thrives on acquiring more things, more satisfaction, more status or fame. Again, approval. So in short, the ego loves to feel special. And Dean Jackson, another author, I like this quote. He says, you can't satisfy the ego. You can only feed it with its hunger with ego snacks like thrills, chemicals, conceit, anger, gossip, purchases, and achievements. But shortly after these feedings, the ego returns larger and hungrier than before. Last part, it lives in fear. Well, Eckhart Tolle is another author. As you can tell, I've been reading a lot. And he says that the underlying emotion that governs all activity of the ego is fear, the fear of being nobody, the fear of non-existence, the fear of death. And the best way that I heard it explained was the ego identifies with our physical existence, our physical body, our physical life. And it knows that it's temporary. We're all going to die, right? So the ego believes that it can die. And because it believes it can die, it believes that it has needs in life. And because it believes it has needs in life, it develops over the years fears about getting those needs met. And the needs of the ego are survival, safety, and security. But what happens is it constantly feels like its needs are being threatened. So that takes to the end of the quote. Hopefully I painted a nice picture. But the last part is how to identify your ego. And this is actually kind of fun because you can identify your ego by paying attention to that inner voice that holds our daily running commentary, our color commentator, so to speak. It's that voice that reacts with all our thoughts, our desires, opinions, criticisms, and judgments. My inner voice is hysterical. It cracks me up. It's very opinionated. But your ego loves to be right, is easily offended, and holds grudges. So if you find yourself doing that, that's your ego. It loves to compare, which leads to envy, complaining, and resentment. All you need to know and observe in yourself is this: whenever you feel superior or inferior to anyone, that's your ego in you. So that concludes your PhD in Ego 101. So now let's apply it to officiating. And this is a slide that we used back in 2017. And again, we always have a theme, and the theme was fighting your biggest enemy. So what I did was I started with the question to the group of campers: what gets referees into trouble? And we started with, I mean, it's a huge question, but I had to narrow it. I said, let's just talk about communication. And I'm going to give you the answers, but what we came up with is anytime that as officials, and this applies to any sport, we're perceived or labeled as arrogant, defensive, dismissive, unapproachable, you can fill in the blanks, unprofessional, that gets us in trouble as referees. Now, from a partnering or leadership standpoint, I asked the same question: how do we get ourselves into trouble? And we came up with, it's basically being selfish, not considering others, throwing people under the bus during a game. I don't know if anyone's been thrown under a bus during the game. The last part we talked about was adversity. When referees and officials go through adversity, we can compound that adversity and get ourselves into further trouble. And it comes down to, you have two choices. You can either make excuses and point the finger and blame others, or you can take personal responsibility. So at the end, we had this nice long list, and I said, well, what do you see that this list has in common? It's all ego. Every single bit of it is. So, hang on, sorry. So going back to communication and the inner voice, I wanted to illustrate that. And so I found a clip. Disney Pixar did a movie back in 2015 called Inside Out. And it illustrates how our inner voice, our ego, affects our communication.
So, how was the first day of school?
It was fine, I guess. I don't know.
Do you ever look at someone and wonder what is going on inside their head?
Did you guys pick up on that?
Sure did.
Something's wrong.
We're gonna find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
Signal him again.
So, Riley, how was school?
You gotta be kidding me.
For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot?
School was great, all right?
What was that? I thought you said we were gonna act casual.
Riley, is everything okay?
Sir, she just rolled her eyes at us.
All right, make a show of force. I don't want to have to put the foot down.
No, not the foot.
Riley, I do not like this new attitude.
Oh, I'll show you attitude, old man.
No, breathe.
What is your problem? Just leave me alone.
Sir, reporting high levels of sass.
Take it to DEFCON 2.
DEFCON 2.
I don't know where this disrespectful attitude came from.
You want a piece of this, Pops?
Yeah, well, look.
Prepare the foot.
Keys to safety position. Ready to launch on your command, sir.
Just shut up!
Fire!
That's it. Go to your room.
The foot is down. The foot is down. Woo!
Good job, gentlemen. That could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
Come, fly with me, Cachinha.
Okay, so you get the point. Has anyone had to put their foot down with the coach, maybe, perhaps? Going to DEFCON 2, Steve? So basically I asked, okay, let's look at what a coach wants. And they want respect, they want to be heard, they want to be right, and they want honesty. And when the ego doesn't get what it wants, what happens is it reacts. Because that's the ego's self-defense mechanism. It reacts with negative emotions. So these emotions, again, from our ego PhD that you just received, come from a fear of loss. And the visible emotional outbursts that we see are just the tip of the iceberg. And actually someone came up with the anger iceberg, so when I found it, I'm like, this is great. So what we see, the visible part, is the anger that comes, let's say, from a coach. But it actually stems from the underlying reason of, if they don't feel respected, they probably feel rejection. If they don't feel, let me see if I can remember the four. Honesty is where to go? Lying. To be right, they probably feel either lack of knowledge or what was the fourth? Anyways, you get the idea. So then we moved on to partnering, and we talked about what is a bad partner. Think about all the partners you've had that you just dreaded working with. And we came, this is the conclusion, but it came down to one word: selfishness. And these people are, they're selfish before the game, they're selfish during the game, and they're selfish after the game. It's all about them. Conversely, the people you love working with, it's not about them, is it? They always make it about you. So if you look, so I asked the same question: how does a partner want to feel? Respected, valued, and appreciated, and like a contributing member of the group. So the anger iceberg applies to them too. So you get the idea of the trick. If you want to see less anger from people, it's don't let them feel the underlying reason. But instead of trying to keep all of these reasons straight in your head, I'm going to make it real simple for you. So I got the secret to handling egos, and I'm going to condense it all down to one Post-it note, okay? Here's what it comes down to. I want you to approach that coach or that player, and I'll even expand it, that table crew, the janitor, everybody, as if they're wearing that sign on their head: make me feel important. And I actually got that. Anyone ever hear of Dale Carnegie? He wrote a book, sold like 15 million copies. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so this book was all about basically how to handle people's egos. And he said that the one all-important law of human conduct, always make the other people feel important. And I'll add one other piece to that, which he does mention, and do it sincerely. So is it about kissing up or kissing their butt? Not at all. You know, sometimes we have to discipline, sometimes we have to take care of business, but there's a way of doing it where you still feel important. Has anyone ever had bad customer service? Okay, how about good customer service? Even though you didn't get the answer you wanted, it came down to that those people made you feel important. Last part for officiating, ego and adversity, and this, it comes up all too often, but ego's tied to the types of goals you set. And there's two types of goals. There's mastery motivated goals and there's ego motivated goals. So are you trying to master a craft such as officiating, or are you trying to achieve an outcome? Are you trying to get better, or are you trying to get hired? And there's major difference, and we all know people that pick one or the other. So I like the slide that says the ego urges you to accomplish while the soul merely asks that you enjoy the process. It's easier said than done. But when you look at mastery motivations, and you can apply this to any sport, some examples could be being mechanically sound every night, pursuing the elusive perfect game with our decision making, mastering your focus and awareness skills, facing the different challenges of managing each game personality-wise. These are all things that you can try to work on, every night. Now, the ego motivations, we all know what they are. See, the ego constantly chases after the prize or the reward. And we're just talking in terms of officiating. So for us, it's the assignments, which let's face it, it's either the big assignment or more of them, which equates to money. The position in the crew, which equates to status, or other accolades or recognition that some referees tend to get, which equates to fame. So the rewards actually lead the ego to comparison, and depending on whether you get it or not, if you're getting the rewards, it can lead to pride, and if you're not getting the rewards, it can lead to bitterness. So what I found, or what I try to live by and preach, is chase mastering the craft and let the ego motivation goals come along as a byproduct of mastering the craft. So these things are okay, these are nice when they happen, but let them be a byproduct. Okay, so that